When my grandmother passed away, my family celebrated. They thought the entire $8 million estate was going to my golden child sister. I wasn't even invited to the funeral. But hidden in the legal documents was a clause no one bothered to read, the firstborn granddaughter provision that changed everything. Subscribe to our channel for real stories of justice, family betrayal, and unexpected victories. The funeral director's voice crackled through my phone at 6:47 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, the kind of call that splits your life into before and after. Ms. Bennett, this is Gerald Humphreys from Riverside Memorial. I'm calling about your grandmother, Dorothy Ashford. I'm very sorry to inform you that she passed away yesterday evening. I sat up in my narrow studio apartment in Brooklyn, my coffee going cold on the nightstand. What? When? I didn't even know she was sick. The family requested a small private service, he said carefully. I'm calling because your name appears in some of the estate documents, and I thought you should know. My name. In estate documents. I almost laughed. My family had written me out of their lives 5 years ago when I refused to drop out of Columbia to help run my sister Madison's influencer career. The last time I'd seen my grandmother was at a tense Christmas dinner, where my mother had made it abundantly clear I was no longer welcome at family gatherings. When's the service? I asked. Tomorrow at 2 p.m., but Ms. Bennett, I should mention... He paused. The family specifically requested that we not contact you. I'm reaching out because legally I'm required to notify all beneficiaries listed in the will. Beneficiaries. The word hung in the air like smoke. I'll be there, I said. I arrived at Riverside Memorial at 1:45 p.m. the next day, wearing the only black dress I owned, a simple sheath from Target that had seen me through job interviews and graduate school presentations. The parking lot was full of luxury vehicles, my father's Mercedes, my uncle's Tesla, my sister's brand new Range Rover with the vanity plate Mattie May. Through the funeral home's tall windows, I could see them all inside. My mother in Chanel, my sister in what looked like custom Valentino, my father holding court with extended family members I barely recognized. The Ashford clan, Boston's real estate royalty, gathered to mourn the matriarch who'd built an empire from 3 apartment buildings in Southie. I didn't go inside. Instead, I walked around to the side entrance I remembered from my grandfather's funeral 15 years ago, the small chapel where Grandma Dorothy used to sit and pray while Grandpa's body was being prepared. She'd taken me there once, told me it was the only honest room in the whole building. Everything else is performance, she'd said, squeezing my 12-year-old hand. But in here, you can't lie to God or yourself. I slipped into that chapel now and watched the service through the interior window that overlooked the main hall. My family sat in the front rows, Madison dabbing at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief, my mother's head bowed in practiced grief. Like this video and subscribe for more stories of family secrets and unexpected justice. My Uncle Richard stood to give the eulogy. Dorothy Ashford was more than our mother, our grandmother, our matriarch. She was the foundation upon which this family built its success. I tuned out the rest. The platitudes, the selective memories, the convenient erasure of how Grandma Dorothy had actually built her fortune, scrubbing floors in those first buildings herself, negotiating with union bosses in her broken English, never backing down from men who thought a Polish immigrant woman had no business in real estate. They'd smoothed out all her rough edges, made her palatable for their narrative, just like they'd tried to do with me. The service ended. I watched as they filed out toward the burial, Madison linking arms with both parents, the perfect family portrait. I waited until the last car pulled away, then walked into the main hall. Ms. Bennett. I turned to find a man in his 60s with silver hair and wire-rimmed glasses, carrying a leather briefcase that looked older than I was. He extended his hand. Maxwell Crawford. I was your grandmother's attorney for 42 years. His handshake was firm, his eyes kind. I was hoping you'd come. They didn't want me here. I know. He gestured toward a small conference room off the main hall, which is why I'd like to speak with you privately before the will reading. There are some things you should understand. I followed him into the room, my heart pounding. He set his briefcase on the table, pulled out a thick manila folder, and looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Your grandmother came to see me 6 months ago, he said. She was very specific about what she wanted to happen after her death. Very specific about you, in particular. Me? She knew about the estrangement. Your mother made sure of that. Called Dorothy every few months to update her on how you'd abandoned the family for your ridiculous academic pursuits. He said it with air quotes and obvious distaste. Dorothy listened, said very little, and then asked me to draft a new will. He opened the folder. Inside was a document so thick it could have been a doctoral dissertation. The family believes the estate, valued at approximately $8.2 million, including the real estate portfolio, is going entirely to Madison. Your mother's been planning how to manage it for months. She's already hired an interior designer for the Beacon Hill property. My stomach sank. Of course, Madison, the favorite. Madison, who turned our granddaughter goals into a personal brand. Madison, who posted throwback photos with Grandma Dorothy every week despite visiting her maybe twice a year. But here's what they don't know, Maxwell continued, his voice dropping lower. Your grandmother was old school. She believed in primogeniture, the firstborn inherits. Not the most beloved, not the most photogenic. The firstborn. I stared at him. I'm the firstborn granddaughter. By 3 years. He slid the document toward me, pointing to a section highlighted in yellow. This is the Ashford Family Trust Clause, established by your great-grandfather in 1952 and never revoked. It states explicitly that the primary estate, including the original 3 properties and all assets directly derived from them, passes to the eldest grandchild bearing the Ashford name through the female line. But I'm a Bennett. My father's... Your legal name is Harper Ashford Bennett, he interrupted gently. Your mother insisted on including Ashford when you were born. She thought it sounded more prestigious. That legal middle name makes you an Ashford under the terms of the trust. The room seemed to tilt. You're telling me... I'm telling you that the Beacon Hill property, the 3 original Southie buildings, the investment accounts seeded with profits from those properties, and approximately $6.3 million in liquid assets belong to you. Madison receives the remainder, about $1.9 million and some jewelry, as per your grandmother's wishes. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Does my family know? Not yet. The formal reading is scheduled for next week. They specifically requested you not be invited. He leaned forward. Ms. Bennett, your grandmother wanted me to give you this before that meeting. He pulled out a sealed envelope with my name written in Grandma Dorothy's shaky handwriting. I opened it with trembling fingers. My dearest Harper, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and they still haven't apologized to you. Your mother called me last month to tell me Madison is engaged, some boy from a banking family. She didn't mention you once, didn't say if you were invited to the wedding, if you'd been told, if you even existed. I played along, let her think I was senile, that I believed her version of events where you were the ungrateful daughter who turned your back on family. But I know the truth, Harper. I've always known. I remember when you were 7 and you found that injured pigeon in the garden. Your mother wanted to call pest control, but you insisted we take it to the wildlife rehab center. You saved your allowance to pay the fee. That's who you are. Someone who saves things, who sees value where others see inconvenience. They never saw your value, so I'm making sure they can't ignore it anymore. Everything I built with my own hands. Not your grandfather's money, not your uncle's connections. Mine. And I'm giving it to the one person who never asked me for a dime, who made her own way, who understood that real wealth isn't measured in square footage. The trust clause was always there, Harper. Your great-grandfather put it in place because he believed firstborn daughters were stronger, smarter, more resilient. I believe he was right. I believe in you. Make them remember what the Ashford name really means. Not social climbing and Instagram posts, grit, hard work, and integrity. All my love, Grandma Dorothy. I was crying before I finished reading, tears spotting the paper. Maxwell handed me a tissue box wordlessly. She recorded a video message too, he said quietly, for the will reading. She wanted to make sure they understood exactly why she made this choice. When is it? The reading? Next Tuesday at 10 a.m., my office on State Street. He pulled out a business card. You don't have to come if you don't want to. I can handle it legally without you present. But Harper... He met my eyes directly. I think you should be there. I think Dorothy would want you to see their faces. I spent the next week in a fog, going through the motions at my graduate assistant job in the Columbia Biochemistry Lab, barely sleeping, replaying that letter over and over in my mind. I hadn't told anyone. Not my roommate, not my advisor, not Cassie, my only friend who'd stayed in touch after the family schism. Who would believe it? Penniless Harper, the family disgrace, suddenly inheriting millions? Tuesday morning, I called in sick to work and took the Acela train to Boston. I wore my interview dress again, paired with the only blazer I owned. In my bag was Grandma Dorothy's letter and a folder containing every rejection I'd received from my family over the past 5 years. The Christmas card returned unopened, the graduation invitation ignored, the email from my mother 3 years ago that simply said, "We have no daughter named Harper." Maxwell's office was in a historic brownstone on State Street, all dark wood paneling and leather chairs that smelled like old money. I arrived 15 minutes early and waited in the conference room, watching the Charles River through the window. At 9:58, I heard voices in the hallway. My mother's sharp laugh, my father's deeper rumble, Madison's distinctive vocal fry. "I still don't understand why we have to do this reading at all," Madison was saying. "Can't we just sign the papers and be done with it? I have a fitting at 2. "It's standard procedure, dear," my mother replied. "Maxwell said it won't take long." They walked into the conference room and stopped dead when they saw me. My mother's face went through a remarkable transformation. Shock, rage, confusion, then a practiced neutrality that would have done a poker player proud. "What is she doing here?" "Ms. Bennett is a beneficiary," Maxwell said calmly, entering behind them. "Please, everyone take a seat." "Beneficiary?" My father's voice was ice. "There must be some mistake." My mother wouldn't. "There's no mistake, Thomas." Maxwell opened his briefcase. "Dorothy was very clear about her intentions. Now, if you'll all sit down, we can begin. Comment below. What would you do if your family treated you this way? And don't forget to subscribe for more true stories like this." My family took their seats on one side of the table, leaving me alone on the other side like we were opposing counsel. Madison stared at me with open hostility, her perfectly manicured nails drumming on the mahogany surface. "This is ridiculous," she muttered. "She hasn't seen Grandma in 5 years. Neither have you," I said quietly. "At least not without a ring light and a photographer." She sucked in a breath, but my mother put a warning hand on her arm. Maxwell pulled out a tablet and set it in the center of the table. Before we review the document, Dorothy requested I play this message. "Everyone ready?" Without waiting for an answer, he pressed play. Grandma Dorothy's face filled the screen, thinner than I remembered, sitting in her sunroom with the garden visible behind her. She looked directly at the camera with those sharp blue eyes that never missed anything. "Hello, family. If you're watching this, I'm dead, and you're probably confused about why Harper is in that room. Let me clear it up for you." My mother's jaw tightened. 5 years ago, you cut Harper out of this family because she chose education over enabling Madison's vanity project. You told me she was selfish, ungrateful, that she'd turned her back on everything we stood for. You lied. The video. Dorothy leaned forward slightly. "I have all the emails Harper sent, trying to reconcile. The birthday cards you sent back. The invitation to her graduate school graduation that you ignored. She tried for 2 years to fix what you broke, and you punished her for it." Madison's face had gone pale. My father wouldn't look at the screen. "So here's what I've done. Under the Ashford Family Trust Clause, the one established by my father-in-law in 1952, my primary estate passes to the eldest granddaughter bearing the Ashford name. That's Harper Ashford Bennett." "What?" Madison's voice was a shriek. "That's not— she can't—" Maxwell paused the video. "Let me explain the specifics. Harper inherits the Beacon Hill property, currently valued at $3.1 million. The 3 original Southie properties, now worth approximately $2.8 million combined, and the investment accounts derived from those properties, totaling $6.3 million. The silence was absolute. "Madison," Maxwell continued, consulting his notes, "you inherit $1.9 million from the secondary estate, plus your grandmother's jewelry collection, appraised at approximately $180,000. This can't be legal," my father finally managed. "We'll contest it. You can try." Maxwell's tone was pleasant. "The trust clause has been in effect for 72 years. Dorothy's will explicitly invokes it. Harper is the clear beneficiary under its terms. Any contest would cost you considerably more in legal fees than you'd ever recover, and I have 42 years of documentation showing Dorothy's sound mind and clear intentions." He pressed play again. "I know you're angry," Grandma Dorothy's voice continued. "Thomas, you're probably already thinking about lawyers. Save your money. This is ironclad, and you know it. You wrote your daughter out of your lives, so I'm writing her back in, to everything." She smiled, and it was the smile I remembered from childhood, warm but with steel underneath. "Harper never asked me for anything. When she needed money for textbooks, she worked 2 jobs. When she couldn't afford to come home for holidays, she spent them volunteering at homeless shelters. She built herself from nothing because you gave her nothing. My mother's eyes were glistening, but I couldn't tell if it was shame or rage. Madison received a trust fund at 18, a car at 16, and $40,000 for an engagement party you haven't even held yet. She has never worked a day in her life, never earned anything that wasn't handed to her, never understood the difference between value and price. The video, Dorothy's expression softened. I loved you all, but I respected Harper. And respect in the end matters more than love when it comes to legacy. The screen went black. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The only sound was Madison's ragged breathing and the distant traffic from State Street. Finally, my mother stood. You orchestrated this, she said, pointing at me. Somehow you manipulated her, poisoned her against us. I haven't spoken to Grandma in 5 years, I said evenly. You made sure of that, remember? You told her I was a disgrace, that I'd abandoned the family. You created the situation, and she responded to it. We gave you everything. My mother's voice was rising. Private schools, tutors, opportunities. You gave me what made you look good. I interrupted. And the second I stopped being the daughter you could brag about at country club dinners, you erased me. Didn't invite me to Thanksgiving, Christmas, Madison's engagement party. You sent my graduation card back unopened, Mom. Who does that? You chose some ridiculous biochemistry degree over your family. I chose my future over being Madison's unpaid social media manager. I was standing now, too, years of silence breaking open. You wanted me to drop out of Columbia, to help her film Instagram stories about which salad she ate that day. My career is legitimate, Madison shouted, her face red. I have 1.2 million followers. And I have a master's degree in biochemistry with a 4.0 GPA, I shot back. I'm 3 months from defending a thesis on protein synthesis that could revolutionize cancer treatment. But sure, tell me more about how your sponsored posts for detox tea are changing the world. Girls, that's enough. My father's voice cracked like a whip. He turned to Maxwell. There must be something in that clause, some provision for unsound mind, undue influence. There isn't, Maxwell said firmly. Dorothy was evaluated by 2 independent psychiatrists 6 months ago as part of the estate planning process. Both certified her mental competence. She made this decision with full awareness and clear intention. My father's face went from red to purple. Then we'll sue for emotional distress, for breaking family unity. Thomas. Maxwell's voice was sharp now. Stop. You're embarrassing yourself and wasting time. The will is valid. The trust clause is enforceable. Harper is the legal heir to the primary estate. Accept it. Accept it? My mother laughed high and brittle. Accept that this ungrateful little... Choose your next words very carefully, Diane, I said quietly. Because I'm recording this conversation, and I'd hate for your society friends to hear how the devoted mother really speaks about her daughter. She snapped her mouth shut, eyes widening. Here's what's going to happen, I continued, surprised by the steadiness in my own voice. I'm taking the inheritance, all of it, the properties, the investments, everything Grandma Dorothy left me. I'm going to finish my degree, fund my research, and probably donate a significant portion to causes she cared about. Immigrant rights, women's education, affordable housing. I looked at each of them in turn. And you're going to accept it. Because if you contest this will, I'll make sure every detail of how you treated me becomes public record. Every returned letter, every ignored invitation, every time you chose Instagram aesthetics over your own daughter. I'll testify about the emotional abuse, the manipulation, the systematic erasure, and I'll win. Madison was crying now, mascara streaming down her perfect cheeks. This isn't fair. She didn't even love Grandma. I loved her more than any of you, I said softly. I just loved her without an audience. Maxwell cleared his throat. If there are no further objections, and I sincerely hope there aren't, we can proceed with the formal documentation. Harper, you'll need to sign some papers. The rest of you are welcome to leave. They didn't move immediately, just sat there, processing the complete reversal of everything they'd expected. Finally, my mother stood, gathering her designer handbag with shaking hands. This isn't over, she said. Yes, I replied. It is. It's been over for 5 years. You just didn't realize it until now. They filed out in silence, Madison supported by both parents, looking like someone had died. which I supposed someone had, just not who they thought. When the door closed behind them, I sank back into my chair, suddenly exhausted. "You did well," Maxwell said gently. "Dorothy would have been proud." "I don't feel proud," I admitted. "I feel empty. That's normal. Family estrangement is a kind of grief, even when it's necessary." He pushed a stack of papers toward me. "These are the initial transfer documents. We'll need several weeks to process everything fully, but I wanted you to see the scope of what you've inherited." I flipped through the papers, seeing property deeds, account statements, investment portfolios, numbers that didn't seem real. A life I'd never imagined. "The Beacon Hill house is fully furnished," Maxwell continued. "Dorothy lived there until last month when she moved to hospice care. If you'd like, you can move in whenever you're ready. It's yours now." Yours now. The words felt foreign. "What about Madison?" I asked. "The $1.9 million she inherited is more than most people see in a lifetime," Maxwell said firmly. "Don't feel guilty, Harper. Your grandmother made her choices based on who her granddaughters actually are, not who she wished they'd be. Madison will be fine. She has her parents, her influencer income, her wealthy fiancé. She'll survive." I nodded slowly. "And if they contest anyway, they won't." He said it with such certainty that I almost believed him. I've known Thomas Bennett for 30 years. He's a bully and a snob, but he's not stupid. He knows a losing battle when he sees one, and he won't risk the publicity. He was right. 3 days later, I received a formal letter from my parents' attorney acknowledging the validity of the will and confirming they would not be pursuing legal action. There was no apology, no explanation, just cold legal language that somehow hurt more than their anger had. Madison posted a statement on Instagram: "Processing the loss of my beloved grandmother and learning to navigate unexpected family challenges. Thank you for your support during this difficult time. Grief journey, family first." The comments were full of sympathy, nobody knowing that the unexpected family challenges were her losing $6 million to the sister she'd helped erase. I didn't respond, didn't comment, didn't engage. Just quietly packed up my studio apartment in Brooklyn and moved into the Beacon Hill house that now belonged to me. The house was exactly as I remembered from childhood visits. Tall ceilings, crown molding, a garden that Dorothy had tended herself until the week before she died. Her reading glasses were still on the side table in the sunroom, her favorite shawl draped over the back of her chair. I stood in that sunroom, looking out at the garden where I'd found the injured pigeon 20 years ago, and finally let myself cry. Not for the money, not for the victory over my family, but for the grandmother who'd seen me when no one else would, who'd believed in me when belief cost her the approval of her own son. That night, I opened my laptop and started drafting an email to my thesis advisor at Columbia. I explained the situation: the inheritance, the need to relocate to Boston, the request to finish my degree remotely while setting up the Dorothy Ashford Foundation for Women in STEM, because that's what I'd decided to do with a portion of the money. Not to spite my family, but to honor the woman who'd given me everything by believing I was worth something. The foundation would provide full scholarships to first-generation college students pursuing degrees in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. It would offer mentorship, research funding, and support for women who, like me, had been told their ambitions were too big, their dreams too impractical, their worth too small to matter. It would be everything Grandma Dorothy had built her empire on: grit, integrity, and the stubborn refusal to let anyone else define your value. 6 months later, I stood in the ballroom of the Boston Harbor Hotel at the Dorothy Ashford Foundation's inaugural gala. Cassie had flown in from Chicago to be there, wearing the dress I'd bought her because I could afford to now, because having money meant I could finally show appreciation to the people who'd stayed when staying wasn't easy. The room was full of scientists, educators, philanthropists, people who cared about research and education, not Instagram aesthetics. My thesis advisor had made the trip from New York. Maxwell Crawford was there with his wife, beaming with pride like I was his own granddaughter. And in the corner, trying to look inconspicuous near the catering table, were my parents and Madison. I'd sent them invitations, not because I wanted them there, but because I wanted them to see what their rejected daughter had become, what Grandma Dorothy's faith had created. If you've made it this far, hit subscribe and tell me in the comments. Should family always come first, or does it depend on how they treat you? Madison approached me as I was speaking with the MIT dean about potential partnership opportunities. She looked different, less polished, more uncertain. The girl who'd always known exactly where she belonged suddenly looked lost. "Can we talk?" she asked quietly. I excused myself from the dean and followed her to a quiet alcove near the windows overlooking the harbor. "Nice event," she said, not meeting my eyes. "Very... you. Thank you." Silence stretched between us, awkward and heavy. "I didn't know," she finally said. "About the letters you sent, the graduation invitation. Mom said you'd cut us off, that you wanted nothing to do with us. And you believed her. She's our mother." Madison's voice was small. "Why wouldn't I? Because you knew me, Maddie. We grew up together. You knew I wouldn't just abandon everyone without trying to fix it." She flinched at the nickname I hadn't used in 5 years. I was 19. I was stupid and selfish and I'm sorry. I studied her face, looking for the manipulation I'd learned to expect from my family. But all I saw was genuine regret, the kind that comes from realizing you've lost something irreplaceable. "Okay," I said. "Okay?" She looked up, hope flickering in her eyes. "Just like that?" "Just like that. I accept your apology." I paused. "But that doesn't mean we go back to how things were. That doesn't mean I forget 5 years of silence, or that you're automatically back in my life. It means I'm choosing not to hold on to anger that will only hurt me." She nodded slowly, tears threatening her carefully applied eyeliner. "That's fair. How's the wedding planning?" I asked, because I could afford to be gracious now, could afford to show interest in the life she'd chosen. "We called it off, Derek and I." She laughed, but it was brittle. "Turns out when you're suddenly not an heiress, some fiancés lose interest pretty quickly." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. You were right about him. About a lot of things." She twisted her hands together. "I'm thinking about going back to school, actually. Marketing degree. Mom's furious. Says it's beneath the family name, but..." She shrugged. "I think Grandma would have approved." "She would have," I agreed. Dorothy loved education. Loved people making their own way. Another silence, but this one felt different. Less hostile, more sad. The kind of sadness that comes from grieving what could have been. "I should get back," I said. "The program's starting soon." "Harper?" She caught my arm as I turned to leave. "Thank you for the invitation. For not shutting me out completely." "We're still family," I said. "We're just figuring out what that means now." I walked back to the podium as the lights dimmed and the program began. Maxwell introduced me with a warmth that made my throat tight, talking about Dorothy's vision and the legacy she'd entrusted to her granddaughter, who understood the difference between inheritance and earned worth. I stepped up to the microphone, looking out at the crowd of people who'd come to celebrate education and opportunity, and began my speech. My grandmother, Dorothy Ashford, built her fortune from 3 apartment buildings in South Boston, and a relentless belief that hard work matters more than pedigree. She was a Polish immigrant who learned English from library books, who negotiated business deals with men who thought she was a secretary, who never forgot where she came from or who she'd been before the money. I paused, seeing my parents in the crowd, their faces carefully neutral. She taught me that real wealth isn't measured in dollars or properties. It's measured in the opportunities you create for others, the doors you open, the futures you make possible. This foundation exists because she believed in investing in people who might not look like success on paper but carry it in their determination. The speech continued, statistics about women in STEM, scholarship details, partnership announcements. But my mind kept returning to Grandma Dorothy's letter, to the trust she'd placed in me when no one else would. After the event ended and the last donors had left, I stood alone in the empty ballroom, looking at the foundation banner with Dorothy's name in elegant script. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "This is your mother. Your father and I would like to meet for coffee sometime. If you're willing. No expectations. Just coffee." I stared at the message for a long time. 5 years ago, I would have leaped at this chance, would have done anything for this olive branch. Now I felt only a calm certainty about my worth that had nothing to do with their approval. I typed back, "Maybe. Let me think about it." Because I could afford to think about it now. Could afford to set boundaries, to demand respect, to refuse to settle for crumbs of affection from people who should have given me the whole meal. I pocketed my phone and walked out into the warm Boston night, past the harbor where ships move silently through dark water, carrying cargo to ports unknown. Moving forward, always forward, just like me. The inheritance had given me financial security, yes. But more importantly, it had given me validation from the one person whose opinion truly mattered. Grandma Dorothy had looked at both her granddaughters, the Instagram perfect one and the forgotten one, and chosen to invest in character over charisma, substance over surface. She'd bet on me when no one else would, and I'd make damn sure it was the best investment she ever made. 2 years have passed since that gala. The Dorothy Ashford Foundation has awarded 42 full scholarships to women in STEM, funded 3 research projects, and partnered with 18 universities across the country. My thesis on protein synthesis applications in cancer treatment was published in Nature and is currently in clinical trials. I still live in the Beacon Hill house, though I've made it my own, converted Dorothy's sewing room into a home lab, turned the formal dining room into a foundation office, planted new flowers in the garden where that injured pigeon once recovered. My relationship with my family is complicated. Madison and I have coffee once a month, carefully rebuilding something that might eventually resemble sisterhood. She finished her marketing degree and now works for a nonprofit, using her social media skills to actually help people instead of selling them things they don't need. My parents and I meet quarterly, stilted conversations over expensive meals where we all pretend the past 5 years didn't happen. I don't know if we'll ever be close again. I'm not sure I want to be. But we're civil, which is more than I expected. The Southie properties are now affordable housing units with a preference for first-generation immigrants, managed by a nonprofit I established in Dorothy's memory. The investment accounts continue to grow, funding scholarships and research grants for students who remind me of myself. Smart, determined, and chronically underestimated. Sometimes I stand in Dorothy's sunroom at sunset, watching the light change over the garden, and I swear I can feel her presence. Not in any supernatural way, but in the weight of her faith, the echo of her belief, the legacy she trusted me to carry forward. They gave my sister everything in the will, but they forgot the clause that named me first. And in the end, that forgotten clause didn't just give me money, it gave me back myself. The girl who saved injured pigeons, who valued education over approval, who understood that worth isn't inherited or assigned but earned through integrity and persistence. Grandma Dorothy saw that girl when no one else would. And now, through the foundation that bears her name, I'm making sure other girls like her get seen too. Because that's the real inheritance, not the properties or the investments, but the belief that one person's faith can change a life, that being underestimated can be a gift, and that sometimes the family who truly knows your value isn't the one you were born into, but the one you choose to create. My name is Harper Ashford Bennett, and this is the story of how I reclaimed my name, my worth, and my legacy, one forgotten clause at a time.